sbagliata, messa fuori, c'è Pirlo, ancora Pirlo di tacco, tiro, gol! Grosso, gol di Grosso, manca un minuto, gol di Grosso.
Hello and welcome to the Milan Talk podcast. I'm your host Amit Paul, and unfortunately we've got a disappointing and very frustrating 1-1 draw with Sassuolo to discuss tonight. Great strike from Matteo Politano, gave the visitors the lead, and of all people it was Nikola Kalinic who came off the bench to score an equaliser for us. Really frustrating, particularly given the fact that both Inter and Roma dropped points this weekend. Lazio turning out to be the main beneficiaries of all the results, but a big missed opportunity for us. There were positives to take away from it, I felt, though. I think we dominated possession. We looked good when we played with a quick tempo. It's what's needed in games like this at home. We need to move the opposition around and give them different things to think about. So I think we did that well. And we won the ball back really well, very quickly as well, to kind of nullify their threat on the counter-attack. So I thought we did play fairly well for the most part in the game. But the negatives certainly outweigh the positives for me on this one. We can have all that possession. It's all well and good dominating possession for a game, but ultimately, we didn't do anything with it. Whether it was a lack of a clinical edge, just not enough decisiveness in the final third, it was just a really disappointing performance overall against a really average team fighting relegation, if we're being honest. So, for me, massive missed opportunity, and it could now prove really costly for us in our hopes of a top 4 finish. So, very frustrating evening. Starting with the manager rating out of 10, I've given Gattuso a 5. Yes, we can praise him for the good decisions he's made in previous wins over Lazio and Inter and other teams, but in big games against Arsenal, Inter, Juve in recent weeks, I feel as though he is starting to get a couple of things wrong. I think the switch to a back 3 in this one was a disaster. I don't think it worked at all. I think we looked more vulnerable at the back. We weren't as kind of direct or impactful with our attacks either, and it just kind of all fell apart and made it pretty easy for Sassuolo in the end. I think Gattuso even noted in his post-match interview that yes, he got that call wrong, so at least he can hold his hands up and he's honest. He doesn't shy away from stuff like that we've seen with previous managers who kind of try and brush it off under the rug and say that we had a great game but we just couldn't find the breakthrough. So at least he's honest, but for me, I just think he got that wrong, the key decision tactically. And I think it was a really silly decision to risk playing Romagnoli from the start. You could see with the strapping on his thigh that he obviously had a problem. Again, Gattuso kind of downplayed it in his interview after the game, but for me, it looked like a pretty serious issue. So why start him? It's a poor decision for me as well. So Gattuso unfortunately gets a 5 on this occasion. On to the player ratings. Donnarumma I've given a 6. I don't think he can be faulted for the goal. It was a great strike. Perhaps he could have got a hand to it. But for me, I think it was a decent goal. So I'm not going to pick too much holes on that. He didn't have a great deal to do throughout the rest of the game, but I think he produced some decent saves. He did have that one moment where he spilled it, but recovered well away from danger. So I think that was a decent save. But overall, I think it was good enough to get a 6 out of 10. Ignacio Abate gets a 6 as well. I think taking into context the fact that he hasn't played a great deal of football in recent weeks, he did well defensively, I thought, to keep it tight at the back. And yes, it was a little bit disappointing. I think he could have made a few more overlapping runs, but for me, I think he did push forward when he had an opportunity. So I personally was relatively happy with Abate's performance, so I've given him a 6. Bonucci gets a 7. I think, apart from the booking, which was disappointing, he got that for dissent, which now rules him out against Napoli next weekend. And obviously combined with Romagnoli's injury, we could be really light at the back now. I think Bonucci was solid. I think he was great defensively. I didn't think he really gave Berardi or any others a sniff for the most part. And that comes with the fact that he also had to move around the back line, moving over to the left when Romagnoli went off, and then onto the left of a back 3 as well at one point. So 7 out of 10 for Bonucci. I think he did well, showing his versatility in that sense. Romagnoli I can't give a rating to, of course. He only lasted 8 minutes. But again, I just want to reiterate the point that I don't think he should have even been in the starting lineup. You can say, yes, the strapping's there. All players have that strapping and play with little niggles. But for me, that looked pretty serious. And for him to only last 8 minutes, that's a real setback. And now we're going to have to wait and see if he's sidelined for a while. So that was a very disappointing aspect of it as well. Ricardo Rodriguez gets a 6. I think he played relatively well defensively. I can't remember him being caught out too much. And I think he actually showed a bit more attacking quality. I think there were a couple of deliveries into the box, especially the one in the first minute for Kessie. I think he showed he has got a great left foot. He can put a great ball in the box, but we just haven't seen enough of it. So I think it's a step in the right direction for him. So I've given him a 6, and I think he's done a decent job there. Frank Kessie, I've given a 5. I think maybe that's a little bit harsh, but I'll leave you to leave your comments below and let me know what you think. But I've given him a 5 because I think it's all well and good praising him for the positive stuff that he does, and we know what he does. He's combative, he's energetic, he's intense, he does really good things on the pitch. But the problem with him, for me, is that he is still not delivering in the final third. I did mention it on Twitter. We're now 31 games into the season, and I haven't seen a marked improvement in his decision-making or execution in the final third. Whether it's the wrong decision-making, whether it's just a poor delivery, whether it's missing good opportunities to score goals, I think he can be a lot better in an attacking sense, and we need him to be, because if we'd have scored in the first minute with that chance he had, the game, completely different story. Sassuolo have to come out and play football, whereas they just went into a shell, defended in numbers throughout the game. So for me, that was really disappointing aspect of Kessie's performance, and I am concerned that things aren't clicking and he's not improved in that aspect. So a 5 out of 10 for Kessie. Biglia gets a 6. I think he did get tired as the game went on. You could visibly tell that he was a bit slower to get around the pitch and he wasn't really doing much with the ball. However, I've given him a 6 because I think for the first time in a long time, I've sat there and I've actually appreciated the job that he's done. I think he kept things tight in between the lines. He was good to sweeping up and kind of winning back possession, and then obviously starting play for us moving forward. I think there were a good few occasions where he did really well, so I've given him a 6 for that. I think he did a good job. Bonaventura, unfortunately, gets a 5 out of 10. I think in comparison to his recent performances, I'd probably say that it's an improvement. I think, yes, he was sloppy on the ball again at times, but when he was drifting out to the left and he was just becoming a bit more involved in play, I think there were definitely more positive signs from him. It's not going to help, obviously, with the crowd being on his back every time he gets a decision wrong or makes a mistake. So in those circumstances, I think he did quite well. Obviously, he had that great shot right at the end, drew a brilliant save out of Consigli, so that was unfortunate. But I think it's definite improvement, but not enough for me to warrant more than a 5. So hopefully this is the first step in the right direction for Jack after a difficult month or so. I've given Suso a 6. I think there were periods in the game where he looked at a real threat. Whether it was with his delivery into the box, whether it was cut into the byline, or generally just his work in the final third, I think he did emerge as pretty much our best option in attack to make something happen. The problem that I have with Suso is, and it's not a new one, is that I just feel as though if he's going to be that player for us, that main creative spark, I just have my doubts over whether he can do it consistently and make a decisive impact when it matters. I think we've seen that he's struggled to do so in recent weeks. And for me, if you're going to put that much emphasis and that much responsibility on a player's shoulders, he has to be much better. So I'm growing a little bit concerned with Suso. And yes, he's a fantastic player, but for a man that's going to be our main man, I just don't think that he's doing enough. So gets a 6 on this occasion, but he just needs to do much more to be a more decisive and impactful player for us. Unfortunately, I've had to give Cutrone a 5. I think he struggled early on to get involved in the game. He did drop back deep and had a nice few touches to get himself involved, so credit to him for that. But I just think it was a struggle for him throughout to get involved in the game and have a positive influence on it. I think the problem that I have as well is that the way that we're playing at the moment isn't suited to his strengths. It's all well and good just chucking balls into the box time after time and hoping he gets his head onto one, or there's a stray clearance and he's able to capitalise. But his strength has always been those clever runs in behind the defence. We did see that exploited at times. There were some clever balls in behind to get him loose and he had a couple of shots blocked. But I think we need to be more intricate and more clever with our passing inside and through the middle to make the most of Cutrone. So that was a disappointing part of the performance as well. Hakan Çalhanoğlu gets a 6. Again, I think he gets around the pitch really well. He puts in a massive shift defensively for us, but I think he's just got quality distribution on him. I think he's good at switching play. He can make something happen. He had a couple of decent shots on target as well. But crucially, I think a similar story with Bonaventura and Suso is that neither of them, any of them, just made a decisive impact. They are our creative trio. We need them to do more, and they just didn't deliver on the night, unfortunately. So I've given Hakan a 6, but just a tad bit better than the other two. On to the substitutes, I've given Musacchio a 5. I think he started off quite well when he came on, and of course he got the assist for the goal, so credit to him for that. However, I think he should have done better on Politano's goal. I think he should have acted quicker to cut that off and nullify the threat, which he didn't, and it cost us. And just generally, I don't know whether it was after the switch to the back three again that kind of pushed him out of position and off his stride. I just feel as though he kind of struggled as the game went on to really have a positive impact. So I've given him a 5 out of 10. Silva also gets a 5. I think he didn't really threaten to find a goal for us. I think he does add a different dynamic, and he is a player that I have argued that should be a starter for us. But on this occasion, I think he needed to do more to kind of find that breakthrough for us. But against a team like Sassuolo, who defended in numbers, didn't really want to go out and attack and find the goal, I think it was probably the right decision from Gattuso to actually play 2 up top in this one. His Silva's creativity and ability to drop deep and kind of be more useful in that front 2 alongside Cutrone, I think would have worked much better. So unfortunately, I've given him a 5, but I think it was a positive enough impact, and I would like to see him start sooner rather than later, but we'll have to wait and see. Ending it off with Kalinic, I've given him a 6. Took his goal really well to his credit. I think it was a great turn and finish, so he has been under fire, and for him to kind of show that composure and goal scoring ability, that was good to see. So hopefully that gives him a lift and us a lift moving forward. However, he did have 2 other brilliant opportunities with his head, didn't make the most of it, and ultimately we could be looking at a different scoreline if he was more clinical, even if he did only have about 20 minutes or so on the pitch. So yes, fantastic to see him score, but he did spurn some other opportunities. So I think he's going to have to do a little bit more to win over the fans just yet. But 6 out of 10 for Kalinic, and good to see him back on the score sheet. On to your Twitter comments. At MDCoop3, looked fatigued, predictable, no creativity. I'd start Silva from now on as he has ability on the ball. I agreed with MDCoop3. I think Kalinic has probably booked himself a starting spot against Napoli with that goal, seeing as Gattuso loves him so much. But our play in the last third is very frustrating, and I do feel as though Silva can offer something different with his kind of flair and good technical quality. I think he can make something happen for us, so I'd like to see him start, but we've been saying this for weeks now and it's still not happening, so who knows when it will actually happen. Samir Mohammed, at Samir Mohammed 72, we played really good tonight, but that one slip cost us the match. Kessie should have converted those chances. Goodbye to our Champions League hopes. Hello, Europa League. We're back. Concili was playing like David De Gea. Samir also raised concerns over Zapata playing against Napoli, with Bonucci suspended and Romagnoli potentially injured. And he also made a very good point, which I haven't even looked at in the table because I've been too busy looking at what's above us. We might even miss out on Europa League, as Fiorentina are only 2 points behind us. Difficult to disagree with anything there, Samir. Absolutely, Kessie should have made most of those chances. He didn't. I personally feel as though this is a killer blow for our Champions League hopes as well. I was really all in, especially with results earlier in the day. I thought if we won tonight, it was still all to play for, but to be held to a draw, and with Napoli next, and then Torino away after that, seeing as though what they just did to Inter today as well, I do fear for the worst, unfortunately, for our Champions League hopes, but I hope I'm wrong. And yeah, it really is a concern. I think we need to start looking behind us as well now. We definitely don't want to slip down from 6th. We need to get Europa League at least. It's still a learning curve for some of these players, so playing in Europe will be beneficial to them. But obviously, naturally, we all want to be in the Champions League. But if it's the Europa League, then so be it. At Federico Di Falco, I wouldn't have to say this, but it's a wasted opportunity and it's all on Gattuso. 3-5-2 was clueless. Players didn't know how to move the ball on the pitch with this scheme. I actually 100% agreed with this. I thought, like I mentioned earlier, there were specific moments with Musacchio at the back where after we switched to the back 3, you could tell he was in possession and he was looking around trying to figure out where everyone was. So that kind of killed us for 5 or 10 minutes, I thought, just trying to adjust and get used to the fact that we were going back to a 3-5-2-ish. I really didn't feel that was a great decision from Gattuso, unfortunately. So I think that did have a negative impact on us in the closing stages. At Precious Mowgli, how much is Suso's release clause? We need to start planning how to spend it. He needs to be told football is a team sport, and if he can't adapt his game to suit the team, he should be selfish elsewhere. I do believe it is a €40 million release clause. I think, as I mentioned earlier again, I think Suso is a quality player. There's no doubt about that. He's very, very good. However, the limitation I do put on him is if he's going to be that player, that creative playmaker that we look to make things happen on a consistent basis, I don't feel as though he's done enough to prove that he can do that job for us on a consistent basis. So for me, if we're going to have to sell someone and Suso goes, I wouldn't be devastated. I would prefer to see him stay, but ultimately, I don't feel as though he's living up to the billing that we're almost giving him. So I think he needs to really start to put his foot down now in the last stage of the season and prove that he can be the man for us. At Borikanes, Boriola Dami, unlucky, but let's keep our heads high. Still have hope for 4th place. I praised Bori's positivity. I do like it, but I do feel as though this was a massive opportunity missed, and I think next weekend could ultimately just end our hopes altogether, but I hope I'm wrong. At Aninda S, needed 2 forwards to start the game. What with Sassuolo being so weak in attack, Andre Silva really helps creating chances as well, unlike Cotrone and Kalinic. Agreed with all of that. I think we definitely could have done with 2 forwards in this game. I think we could have afforded to take that risk given Sassuolo's limited attacking abilities. And I would have gone with Silva and Cotrone up top, but again, that's not what Gattuso went with. So unfortunately, we're only left to discuss what we could have done. At Fassi Carlo, however much it hurts to say, extending Gattuso's contract was a mistake. Yes, he's cheap, but he doesn't have what it takes to keep this talented team consistently playing well. Milan legend, yes, but a bad short-term investment. He also added that Kalinic and Calhanoglu need to take the first flight out of Milan, maybe get some Chinese money and reinforce the attacking midfield strikers like what was supposed to happen with Belotti or Aubameyang. Suso hasn't impressed me the last few weeks. He can also go. I do take on board what Carlo had to say, but I do disagree with certain aspects of it. I think, yes, I'm still in full support of the Gattuso appointment, but he has been making some questionable decisions, so I think he did need to reevaluate that decision to start Romagnoli and go with a back 3. I think those backfired and he didn't admit as much, so that was a really frustrating aspect of the performance that Gattuso influenced. And in terms of Kalinic and Calhanoglu criticism and Suso going, I'd have to disagree with the Calhanoglu shout. I think he's done an incredible job to turn things around from where he was at the start of the season struggling to the player that he is now for us. I think he's done more than enough to earn, an opportunity to stay. Kalinic would be shown the door first for me. And like I mentioned earlier, I think Suso, yes, I think it did disappointing to see him go if he did leave, but ultimately for me, I wouldn't be devastated. I think we can reinvest that money in a different player who could be more impactful for us. So we'll have to see how that pans out. Right, guys, that's a wrap for this podcast. Thanks for listening, as always. Really do appreciate it. Not the result that we wanted. Really big missed opportunity, frustrating night, particularly with those other results in mind. We can only hope that we can get the right result against Napoli next weekend. We're going to have to hope for others to drop points. But unfortunately for this one, it's a disappointing night, and we'll have to try and bounce back now with difficult games coming up against Napoli and then Torino. But thanks again for listening. Thanks for all your comments. I'll be back next weekend for the Napoli game. But until then, Forza Milan.